My name is Linda Foster. I just turned 21, and I'm grinding through college while working part-time at this coffee shop in Salem, Massachusetts. Growing up in my family was like being invisible. I lived in the same townhouse with them, but they never really looked at me. My sister was the star of the show, the one who got all the love and praise. Every bit of their attention went straight to her while I was left there, hoping for scraps. Being ignored for so long carved something dark inside me. A quiet bitterness that I kept hidden deep down. Part of me kept hoping that someday they'd notice what I did, who I was. But that hope shattered completely last Wednesday night during our Thanksgiving preparations. The kitchen was complete chaos, stuff everywhere, and I was desperately trying to finish work on my laptop before the deadline hit. Then my sister did something that changed everything. Whether it was accidental or intentional spite, she knocked my laptop right off the counter. The screen shattered. Everything I'd been working on vanished. I stood there frozen, my heart racing like crazy, and then she got right up in my face. Her words cut like a knife. "No one wants you here." My parents were standing right there. They saw it all. Neither of them said a word to defend me. Instead, they nodded along with her. That silence said more than any words could have. Something broke inside me at that moment. I didn't scream or break down crying. I simply grabbed my bag, walked straight out the door, got in my car, and drove to my friend's apartment. My chest felt like someone was sitting on it, but my mind was crystal clear about what I needed to do. When morning came, my phone went crazy. 13 missed calls from my family. Text messages kept piling up one after another. Suddenly they needed me for something. But I just stared at that screen with this weird sense of calm washing over me. What could possibly make them this desperate after treating me like garbage? If you've ever been the invisible one in your own family, hit like and subscribe to watch how I finally took my power back. This wasn't some new pattern in my life. Growing up in our Salem townhouse, I'd always been the kid they forgot about, the one who never quite belonged. My earliest memories are filled with moments that still hurt when I think about them. When I turned 11, my mom and dad completely forgot to plan anything for my birthday. They were too wrapped up in celebrating Kelly for some school project she'd done. I ended up sitting by myself with a cupcake from the store, pretending to smile while they laughed together at dinner. Kelly is 6 years older than me, and she had this way of taking everything that was mine. My clothes, my personal space, even the attention from our parents, she claimed it all without thinking twice. One time she grabbed my favorite jacket, threw it in her closet, and when I asked to have it back, she just smirked at me. Her exact words were, "You don't need it," in that cutting tone she always used. After that, I stopped asking for my stuff back. So, I threw myself into working. I took shifts at the local coffee shop, saving up every penny for college. Each dollar I managed to put away felt like one step closer to freedom, to something that belonged to me alone. Meanwhile, Kelly did some freelance graphic design work, but she basically coasted on our parents' money. They'd slip her cash whenever she needed it for projects, while they thought my paychecks were just some cute hobby. My dad, Albert, works as a bank clerk. He barely even glanced up from reading his newspaper when I tried talking about my goals and dreams. My mom, Diane, stays home, and she absolutely doted on Kelly. They were like mirror images of each other, both confident and charming, always shining bright. I was the quiet one, the daughter, who didn't seem to matter at all. Aunt Angela, who's my mom's sister, would come visit and join right in with all their praise for Kelly. I'd be the one clearing dishes while they talked. Year after year went by like this. Each little slight added another weight pressing down on my chest. I'd lie there at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was wrong with me. Why wasn't I good enough for them? Kelly's mean comments got sharper as time went on. Her sense of entitlement grew bolder. She'd take my belongings, break them, and actually laugh about it. This one time, she spilled paint all over my sketchbook, destroying months' worth of drawings I'd worked on. When I told Mom, she just brushed it off.
"She didn't mean it," Mom said.
But when I looked in their eyes, I could see the real truth. Kelly was everything to them. I was just a burden they had to deal with. I tried making myself invisible, thinking maybe that would hurt less than their indifference. It never worked, though. Every achievement they ignored, every promise they forgot, It all built up this quiet rage deep inside me. I locked it away, kept waiting for the moment they'd finally see me. But hope is fragile. By the time last Wednesday rolled around, mine was falling apart. That whole Thanksgiving prep situation was my breaking point. I'd been balancing my laptop on the counter, racing against the clock to meet a deadline for this class project. Then Kelly's carelessness, or maybe it was deliberate cruelty, sent everything crashing down. The screen went black instantly. All my work disappeared. When she said, "No one wants you here," those words weren't exactly new.
But somehow they hit different that night.
Dad nodded in agreement. Mom stayed completely silent. They weren't just ignoring me this time. They were actively choosing her over me again. All those years of being overlooked came rushing back at once, every single forgotten moment flashing through my mind. I didn't shed a tear or try to argue my case. I just walked out, threw my bag over my shoulder, heard the door click shut behind me, and left. At my friend Vincent's place, I crashed on his couch. I lay there staring up at the ceiling for hours, feeling the hurt slowly transform into something colder and harder. When my phone started going off the next morning, I wasn't even surprised. They hadn't bothered calling me in months, but now suddenly they needed something from me. I didn't know what yet, but all those years of being pushed to the side had taught me something important. I was completely done waiting around for their approval. That night wasn't just another family fight. It marked the end of me pretending I belonged with them. I'd wasted years trying to earn their love, and all I ever got back was indifference. Now, with my phone lighting up constantly, something shifted inside me. For the first time ever, I was the one holding all the power. The morning after, while I was still at Vincent's apartment, my phone just wouldn't quit buzzing. I rubbed my eyes as dim light came through his curtains, making long shadows stretch across the floor. Sleep had been rough. Pieces of the previous night's confrontation kept spinning through my head like smoke that wouldn't clear. The phone vibrated again on the coffee table, demanding my attention, dragging me back to reality. I grabbed it, my heart beating faster as the screen lit up with all these notifications. 13 missed calls total. Most were from Diane, a few from Albert, and one from Kelly. My stomach twisted up after years of them giving me the silent treatment. This sudden flood of calls felt wrong, almost desperate in a way. I unlocked the phone and scrolled through the call log. Diane had started calling right at dawn, then Albert tried about an hour later, with Kelly squeezing in between them. Nobody left voicemails, just this raw evidence of how urgent things were for them. Then the text messages started pouring in, one right after another, each one more frantic than the one before. Diane's message popped up first. "We need you home. Kelly's in trouble." My breath caught in my throat. Trouble? What kind of trouble? That word just hung there, super vague but somehow ominous, stirring up this weird mix of curiosity and exhaustion inside me. I stared at the screen with my thumb hovering over it, trying to decide whether to answer or just let them squirm for a while. Another text pinged from Diane. "Please, Linda, it's serious. Call back." Serious. The irony of that word twisted in my gut. How many times had my own problems been dismissed as no big deal? I put the phone down and leaned back against the couch, feeling the rough fabric under my fingers. Vincent made some noise in the next room, but I didn't wake him up. This was my thing to handle, this rare moment where I wasn't the one desperately chasing their approval. The buzzing kept going. Albert's name flashed on the screen now. I ignored it completely, just watching the screen go dim. For the first time in my life, I felt this glimmer of control, this quiet power in choosing silence. As minutes ticked away, more messages flooded my phone. Kelly's text said, "Kurt, you need to help." Help after everything she'd done. That was rich. I picked up the phone again, my fingers shaking slightly. Diane followed up with more details. Kelly messed up with some online sales. People are suing her for fake products. We can't handle this alone. The revelation washed over me like cold water. Kelly's freelance work had always seemed kind of shady to me, with her promising custom designs and taking payments upfront. Now it all made sense. She'd been running a scam, selling counterfeit products through sketchy websites, luring buyers in with low prices. The lawsuits were stacking up, all demanding money she didn't have for restitution. My mind raced, putting together what this meant. Here in Massachusetts, this kind of fraud could lead to serious civil claims, maybe even criminal charges depending on how big the operation was. I let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of their pleas settling over me. They weren't reaching out to make things right between us. They needed a bailout, pure and simple. My savings from all those coffee shop shifts, money I'd worked so hard for and tucked away for my own future, suddenly loomed large in my thoughts. But seriously, why me? Why right now? All that resentment from years past bubbled up, mixing with this new twisted situation. I typed back a response. The words felt absolutely liberating, this small act of rebellion. I could just picture her face, imagine the shock rippling through that house. Albert texted next. This isn't the time for grudges. Come home. Grudges, like my pain was just petty nonsense. I switched the phone to silent mode and let them wait. The morning light got stronger, showing all the simple details of the room. Vincent's bookshelves, a half-empty mug from last night sitting there. In that quiet space, away from all their chaos, I felt something shift inside me. For so long, I'd been the overlooked one, but now they were scrambling around desperate. The control tasted unfamiliar, almost sweet in a way. But I pushed that feeling down and focused on the actual facts. Kelly's scam had finally caught up with her. False ads for knockoff jewelry, electronics, whatever she could peddle. Furious buyers who got nothing or received garbage items had filed complaints that escalated into legal action. The family's finances, already stretched super thin, couldn't possibly cover the settlements. As hours crept by, I thought about my next move. Ignoring them felt right, like setting a boundary I'd never been able to set before. The phone vibrated one more time, but I didn't even check it. Let them sweat it out. In that moment, I realized just how deeply their favoritism had shaped who I became. Always second choice, always expendable. But now, with their crisis unfolding, I was holding the reins. That thought stuck with me, and this quiet resolve started forming. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to rush in. This was my turn to make the decisions. Around noon, another call came through. This time it was from Aunt Angela. The ringtone cut through the quiet of Vincent's apartment, startling me out of my thoughts. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen before I finally answered. Angela's voice, which is usually so warm and chatty, had this strained edge to it. She launched straight into her speech, her words wrapping up the same old plea in family loyalty. Linda, you have to come back. Family sticks together through tough times. The phrase echoed in my ears like some hollow mantra I'd heard growing up a million times. But now it sounded completely false, stirring up this deep frustration I couldn't ignore anymore. I gripped the phone tighter, my mind flashing back to all those patterns of favoritism that had defined our household. Shirley, who always played the mediator role, had witnessed everything. Mom's endless praise for Kelly, Dad's distant nods at whatever Kelly wanted. Yet she'd never stepped in to help me. Why now? I asked, keeping my tone steady, but letting years of hurt seep through. I didn't wait for her to respond before diving into all the memories that fueled my resolve. The way Mom overlooked every effort I made. How Dad dismissed my achievements as minor compared to Kelly's ridiculous whims. Angela stammered, her usual confidence completely falling apart. It's not like that, dear. We all care. But her words faltered, the lilt in her voice giving way to these awkward pauses. I could picture her fidgeting on the other end, totally caught off guard by my directness. The conversation dragged on forever. Shirley kept circling back to appeals about unity, but each attempt only made me feel more isolated. She painted this picture of crisis, emphasizing Kelly's situation without giving real details, as if guilt alone would be enough to pull me back in. Inside, this quiet defiance kept building. For once in my life, I wasn't the one yielding to pressure. Angela's voice got softer, almost begging, but her discomfort was obvious. A crack showing in the family facade. I ended the call suddenly, and the silence that came after felt heavy with all these unspoken truths. Her intervention, which was supposed to bridge the gap between us, only made it wider. It highlighted just how little they actually understood my pain. Moments later, texts from Albert and Diane came flooding in, their urgency cranking up even more. Diane's message flashed first. "Please, we're falling apart without you." Those words twisted something in my chest, this mix of irony and sadness. Falling apart? Had they ever stopped to consider how I'd felt all those years, pieced together from scraps of their attention? Albert's message came next. "Enough games. Come home now." His bluntness, so typical of him, sparked this flicker of anger. They weren't asking nicely. They were demanding. Like my absence was just some minor inconvenience for them. The messages kept rolling in, each one more desperate than the last. Hints about financial strain, vague references to Kelly's mess. Diane added, "We can't do this alone." Alone. The hypocrisy of that word burned. I'd been alone in that house for years, invisible in their tight little circle. I paced around the room, the carpet muffling my footsteps as the weight of all their pleas pressed down. The control I'd glimpsed earlier hardened into real determination. Just ignoring them wasn't going to be enough. I needed to confront this head-on, to see their faces when I actually stood my ground. The idea took root in my mind, a plan forming right there amid all the chaos. I knocked on Vincent's door and explained briefly what was happening. He nodded without hesitation and handed over his car keys. "Be careful," he said, and his concern stood in such stark contrast to my family's completely self-serving outreach. I slipped the keys into my pocket, feeling this sense of purpose steadying me as I gathered my stuff. The texts kept coming. Diane's tone shifted to near hysteria. "Linda, please respond." Albert chimed in again. "This affects all of us." All of us. That phrase mocked me. When had my struggles ever affected them in the slightest? The drive ahead felt huge, even though it was just a short trip back to the townhouse. I stepped out of the apartment, heard the door click shut behind me, and my resolve stayed rock solid. This wasn't about getting revenge. It was about taking back what they'd stolen from me over the years, my voice, my boundaries, my sense of self-worth. The engine hummed to life, carrying me toward a confrontation that had been building up for way too long. About an hour later, I pulled up to our townhouse in Salem. The familiar driveway stretched out before me, but returning there pressed heavy on my chest. I got out of the car, the air thick with late afternoon heat, my heart pounding with this mix of dread and determination. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with panic. Mom sat at the kitchen table with her hands clasped super tight, her eyes red from stress. Dad paced back and forth near the counter, his jaw locked tight, while Kelly slouched in a chair. Her usual confidence was completely gone, replaced by this sullen scowl. Seeing them all in such disarray stirred something inside me. Not pity exactly, but this cold clarity that they were falling apart without me there to prop them up. I stood in the doorway, and my presence immediately shifted the tension in the room. Mom looked up, her expression showing a flicker of hope that quickly faded when she saw my silence. Dad stopped pacing, his gaze sharp, like my arrival was somehow an imposition. Kelly barely even glanced my way, her fingers just fidgeting with her phone constantly. The silence stretched out, heavy with accusations nobody was saying out loud. Finally, Mom spoke up, her voice trembling. "Linda, we need you to help Kelly." The words hit me like a physical punch. Their desperation stood in such stark contrast to all those years of complete indifference toward me. I crossed my arms, steadying myself, and asked what exactly had happened. Kelly shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting away as she muttered, "I got caught up in some online deals. They're suing me for $10,500. The admission just hung there in the air, raw and unfiltered. Kelly's scam of selling fake designer bags and electronics online had completely backfired on her. Now she had angry buyers and lawsuits stacking up. The sum, $10,500, echoed through my mind. That was a fortune that my coffee shop wages could barely make a dent in. I felt this surge of outrage. They actually expected me to fix this problem, to drain my savings account while they never once spared a thought for my struggles. My mind raced back to all those countless times they dismissed me. My broken laptop, my ignored efforts, their nods of agreement with Kelly's cruel words. I took a breath, keeping my voice steady but firm. "I'll help," I said, pausing as their faces immediately lit up with relief. "But only if you apologize publicly in the family group chat. List out every single way you've hurt me over the years." The room completely froze. Dad's eyes narrowed, his hands clenching into tight fists. Mom's mouth opened and then closed again, her shock totally evident on her face. Kelly actually scoffed, her voice dripping with attitude. "This is my fault now." Her pathetic attempt to deflect blame ignited this spark of real anger in me. I stepped forward, choosing my words carefully, laying bare all those years of neglect. Forgotten birthdays, stolen belongings, their relentless favoritism toward Kelly. Each memory came spilling out, this whole list of wounds I'd been carrying in silence for so long. Mom's face crumpled, her hands twisting together nervously. But she didn't interrupt me. Dad shifted his weight uncomfortably, looking like my truth was just some huge inconvenience. Kelly's scowl got even deeper, her fingers tapping away furiously on her phone, but she didn't say anything more. Their silence spoke volumes, this grudging acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused me. Mom nodded slowly, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "We'll do it." Dad just grunted, his reluctance crystal clear, but he didn't argue against it. Kelly rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath, her defiance just a thin cover over her obvious fear. I held their gazes without flinching, my resolve completely unshaken. This wasn't about their money or their crisis at all. It was about forcing them to actually see me, to admit what they'd done wrong in a way they couldn't just take back later. The tension in that room got even thicker, their agreement hanging there like some fragile thread ready to snap. As I turned to leave, Kelly's voice cut through the silence. "You're making this worse." Her accusation stung, but I didn't flinch at all. She was lashing out, desperate to shift the blame somewhere else, but I could see right through it. Their panic, their desperate need for me, only made my certainty deeper. I walked out, hearing the door close behind me, my steps steady and sure. The drive back to Vincent's place felt lighter somehow. The weight of all their chaos wasn't mine to carry anymore. I'd laid down my terms clearly, and for the first time in my entire life, they couldn't just ignore me. That confrontation had shifted something fundamental inside me, drawn a line I wouldn't let myself cross again. The next morning, my phone pinged with a new message in the group chat. I sat up on Vincent's couch, the faint hum of his apartment grounding me as I opened the app. The family chat, which was usually totally dormant, glowed with a single stiff paragraph. Mom's name was attached to it, but the words felt forced, like they'd been pieced together from some script they hadn't even bothered rehearsing properly. They apologized for past oversights, for not always being fair, and for any hurt they'd caused. The phrases were completely hollow, carefully crafted to avoid taking real accountability for anything. No mention whatsoever of the forgotten birthdays, the stolen belongings, or all those years I'd spent as their afterthought. It was just a performance, not actual remorse. And honestly, it stung way more than their silence ever had. I leaned back against the couch, my fingers tracing the edge of my phone, this bitter taste settling in my throat. The apology was purely a means to an end, just a transaction to get access to my savings for Kelly's disaster. I could picture them all huddled together somewhere, debating every single word, hoping it would be just enough to pull me back into their orbit. But the clarity I'd found while being away from them held firm. I wasn't their lifeline anymore. I typed out a response, my hands completely steady. "You don't want me. You want my money. I'm done." The words landed in the chat like a bomb, this quiet declaration of my truth. I waited, half expecting a flood of angry replies, but only silence followed. Their hesitation was louder than any protest could have been. The weight of their betrayal pressed against me, but it wasn't crushing anymore, not like before. I opened my contacts and scrolled down to Mom's number. Diane Jenkins. The name just stared back at me, a reminder of how distant she'd always been. I hit block. The action was swift and final. Dad's number came next.
Albert.
His dismissive grunts, his blind favoritism toward Kelly, all gone with a single tap. Kelly's name lingered on my screen for a moment longer, her smug taunts still echoing in my mind. But I blocked her too, completely severing the tie that had bound me to her endless chaos. Aunt Angela's number was the last one. Her well-meaning pleas that never actually helped anything. Each block felt like shedding a heavy layer, the weight lifting with every single choice I made. I set the phone down, watching the screen go dark, and let out this long breath. For the first time in years, I actually felt unburdened, like the chains of their expectations had finally fallen away. The quiet of Vincent's apartment wrapped around me, such a stark contrast to the chaos I'd left behind. I thought about that $10,500 they'd been begging for. Money I'd scraped together over countless exhausting coffee shop shifts. It wasn't theirs to claim, not after they'd dismissed my worth for so long. I'd poured absolutely everything into earning their approval over the years. But sitting there, I finally saw it for what it really was. A hollow pursuit that had cost me way too much. Right there on that couch, I began imagining a life completely untethered from their demands. No more chasing after their fleeting moments of attention. No more swallowing my hurt just to keep some fake peace. I could actually focus on my studies, my job, the small circle of friends who genuinely saw me for who I was. Vincent's kindness, his quiet offer of a place to crash, stood in such sharp relief against my family's completely self-serving outreach. I pictured mornings where I'd be free of their constant texts. Evenings I could spend building something completely new for myself. That thought sparked this fragile hope inside me, a vision of a future where I got to define my own worth. That morning, as sunlight came filtering through the window, I felt this real shift happening. The resentment I'd been carrying around for years was actually fading, being replaced by a lightness I didn't even know was possible. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't seeking their validation either. I was enough exactly as I was. And that realization felt like a quiet triumph. Blocking their numbers wasn't just about refusing to help them. It was setting a real boundary, reclaiming my own space in the world. They'd made their choices over and over again. And now I was finally making mine. The group chat sat there silent, their hollow apology left completely unanswered. And I knew with absolute certainty that I'd never look back. My life belonged to me now. And I was ready to actually live it. About a week later, Vincent shared some news with me about my family. We were sitting at his small kitchen table, the smell of fresh coffee grounding me in the moment, and I listened as he relayed what he'd heard from a mutual acquaintance. My sister Kelly had appeared before a judge for her online scam operation. The fallout from all those fake designer goods had landed her a suspended sentence. The court ordered her to pay restitution, which was this crushing weight on the family's already super strained finances. Dad Albert had lost his bank clerk job. The constant stress from Kelly's legal disaster had completely eroded his focus at work until his employer finally let him go. Mom Diane had actually resorted to selling off her cherished jewelry collection, rings and necklaces she'd once loved showing off at family gatherings, just to cover the mounting bills. The townhouse, which had once been this hub of their favoritism and false togetherness, had become a battleground of constant arguments. The cracks in their unity were splitting wide open for everyone to see. Vincent's voice stayed gentle as he described how they were unraveling. A family drifting apart under the pressure they'd created for themselves. I nodded along, absorbing all the details, and this strange calm settled over me. Their collapse wasn't something I'd caused. It was just the natural consequence of their own choices. Years of enabling Kelly's bad behavior, dismissing me completely, chasing after this facade of togetherness that had never actually included me in any meaningful way. I pictured Mom sorting through her jewelry collection, her hands probably trembling with regret. Not regret for how she'd treated me though, just regret for their lost stability and comfort. Dad's pride, which had once seemed so unyielding, was now crumbling under the weight of unemployment. Kelly, stripped of all her charm and confidence, now faced a future completely tethered to court orders and legal obligations. Aunt Angela, who'd pleaded so desperately for family unity, had apparently faded into the background. Her calls were going unanswered by everyone now. Their whole world was fracturing apart, and I felt absolutely no urge to try piecing it back together. Instead, I was actively building something completely new for myself. I'd moved in with Vincent on a temporary basis. His spare room had become this haven of quiet support and understanding. My coffee shop job had ended, but I'd already found new work at a bookstore downtown. It was the kind of place where I could lose myself in pages and genuine conversations with people. The work wasn't anything glamorous, but each paycheck felt like laying another brick in the foundation of my own independent life. I'd started spending my evenings with new friends, classmates and coworkers who actually valued my ideas, my laughter, my presence in their lives. Their acceptance was honestly a revelation, such a stark contrast to the indifference I'd known my entire life at home. We'd grab burgers together at this local diner, share stories during late-night study sessions, and plan outings that filled my weekends with real warmth and connection. For the first time ever, I wasn't desperately chasing approval from anyone. I was actually surrounded by it naturally. The lesson became crystal clear, etched into every single step I took away from that townhouse. Family isn't just about sharing blood. It's about the people who actually see you, who lift you up when you're down, who respect the space you need to carve out for yourself in this world. My family had chosen Kelly's chaos over my quiet, steady efforts year after year. And I'd wasted so much time believing that their rejection somehow defined my value as a person. Cutting them off completely wasn't about getting revenge or being spiteful. It was pure survival, choosing peace and sanity over poison and dysfunction. Blocking their numbers had been my first real step toward freedom, a clear line drawn in the sand to protect this newfound sense of liberation. I didn't hate them exactly, but I definitely didn't need them in my life either. Their apologies, their endless crises, their consequences and drama, none of it was mine to carry anymore. One morning as I walked to work, the crisp Massachusetts air brushing against my face, I felt this deep, totally unshakable sense of freedom. The weight of their expectations, which had once been like a constant shadow following me everywhere, had completely dissolved into nothing. I didn't regret walking away for even a single moment. Their downfall was just this distant echo now, a reminder of what I'd managed to escape from. I thought about Vincent's steady, reliable presence in my life. The bookstore's quiet shelves full of possibilities. The genuine laughter of friends who actually knew my worth without me having to prove anything. This was my life now, built entirely on my own terms, completely free from any need to constantly prove myself to people who would never appreciate it. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore, the permanent afterthought in my own family. I was enough exactly as I was. And that truth fueled every single step I took forward into my new life. As I opened the bookstore door that morning, hearing the bell chime softly above me, I knew I'd finally found home. Not in some physical place, but in myself.